Welcome to all that's going to be joining on into this live. My name is Crystal Air Love. And I wanted to do this live because I'm kind of excited for it. And I actually want to have it for, for my documentary, my own documentary. So I'm going to be saving this live, but I did want to go live to share with this information for you all. And we're going to be speaking upon Vitex Angus Cactus. Vitex Angus Cactus. In other words, called Vitex. This is the herb we're going to be speaking upon. These are the herbal capsules. These are the berries. They're small, tiny, rounded berries. Oops, some of it came out. Okay? And in other ways, it's called Vitex. In supplemental form, if you get it at the pharmacy, which I never recommend anyone to do, because anything from the pharmacy is not natural, okay? But this is the herb that we're going to be speaking upon. Vitex Angus Cactus, from the family of Verbanaceae. Vitex Angus Cactus is used for hormonal concerns. It's also used as a urine tonic and a galactagogue. I'm currently reading off The Medical Herbalism, The Science and Practice of Herbal Medicine by David Hoffman. And this is Materia Medica. Okay? And I originally want to do this live to have it for my own documented purposes, but I'm going to be sharing with you the section for this herb, okay? Vitex Angus Cactus, also known as Vitex. Other names are chaste tree, chaste berry, or monk's pepper. If you are a woman and you have PMS, PCOS, any hormonal issue, having issues with menopause, so on and so forth, this is a very important message for you. Free information I'm sharing here. And I'm going to read you off this section on this herb. Vitex Angus Cactus, other names known to be chaste berry, chaste tree, or monk's pepper. The part that is used is the berry, as shown. Okay, it's a small little berry. Okay. The constituents of this herb has an extreme amount of constituents. And I don't even know if I'll be able to pronounce this right. But what are constituents? Constituents are basically what makes up, chemically speaking, okay, of the herb. Iridoid glycosides, including albumin and N-nucide, labdane, diterpenes, otendifuron, vitexolactone, and the flavonoids, casticin, vitexin, isovitexin, camphora, and the essential oils to this herb. It has 0.4% to 0.7% of Barnel, sorry about that, My office is producing tinctures. The essential oils to this has 0.4% to 0.7% of bornyl acetate, 1,8 cineole, limonene, and A and B pinene. That's the constituents of chemicals or the containment of the herb, okay? The actions and why we use this herb is to hormonally normalize. It's utilized also as a urine tonic and a galactagogue. The indications for materia medica, and this is where it gets interesting because you guys know that I like to talk and understand on why herbs do what they do for us. The indications of this herb when in use, okay? Vitex has the effect of stimulating or normalizing the pituitary gland function, especially as it relates to relative progesterone levels. So if you have any issues with progesterone, if you have any issues with hormones or your brain involving the pituitary gland, this herb is to be used. Vitex may be called an amphoretic remedy as it can produce apparently opposite effects, although in truth it is simply normalizing. The term amphoteric comes from chemistry, in which it is used to indicate the ability of a chemical to react as either an acid or an alkali. So this herb has this, what they call an amphoteric chemistry to it. It has the ability to act as either an acid or an alkali. Interesting. The word itself is derived from the Greek roots meaning partly one and partly the other. In the context of herbal actions, amphoteric implies that apparently opposite effects may be observed, but the overall result is a normalizing effect. For instance, Vitex has a reputation for being both an aphrodisiac and an anaphrodisiac. In effect, the herb will generally facilitate the most appropriate action required to normalize function, no matter what aspect of function is out of balance. Interesting. The most important therapeutic application for Vitex comes from its ability to normalize the activity of female sex hormones. It is thus indicated for dysmenorrhea, premenstrual syndrome, also known as PMS, and other disorders related to hormone function. It is especially beneficial during menopause. Similarly, it may help the body regain a natural balance after discontinuation of oral contraceptives. It's kind of like if the herb knows what to do. The precise mechanisms of action of Vitex and its active constituents have not yet been established fully. Laboratory research suggests that the herb acts on the anterior pituitary gland via a dopaminergic mechanism. This leads to a reduction in release of the hormone prolactin, which in turn enhances corpus luteum development. which in turn enhances corpus luteum development and corrects any relative progesterone deficiency. It is important to note that the effect of Vitex on progesterone levels is indirect, as it works through the complexities of endocrine homeostasis rather than by directly stimulating progesterone release. However, the herb is thought to act on the pituitary hypothalamic axis rather than directly on the ovaries. Vitex not only eases symptoms of PMS, but also over time may actually cure the disorder. PMS has been linked to abnormally high levels of estrogen, and Vitex has proved especially helpful for cases in which symptoms tend to disappear when menstruation begins. Positive results may be perceived as early as the second menstrual cycle, but permanent improvement may take up to 1 year or longer. Vitex is also effective for irregular menstruation, especially when related to endometriosis. The reasons why I'm bringing this up, my dear lovely team, my quiet crew, is because so many of us women experience menstruation. And if that's not already bad enough, we experience irregular menstruation. Well, not all of us. As those that haven't reached puberty, as what they say, don't have menstruation. And after what they call menopause, women don't have menstruation. So this is a very interesting topic, okay? Because we're going to get in depth about this. And we're going to converse about it. Just get our thoughts out here, okay? Vitex is also effective for irregular menstruation, especially when related to endometriosis. So that's interesting in itself, because that means that endometriosis is secondary to an irregular menstruation. But Vitex, or this herb, fixes irregular menstruation and endometriosis. In addition, because progesterone production declines at menopause, Vitex may reduce some of the undesirable symptoms associated with the change. Several studies indicate that Vitex can help control acne in teenagers, both young women and men. The herb is also useful for stabilizing the menstrual cycle after withdrawal from progesterone-containing birth control pills. It may help with fibroid cysts that occur in smooth muscle tissue or in subserous areas, but it's less likely to help with submucous cysts. For women who are trying to get pregnant, Vitex may effectively regulate the ovulatory system, the cycle. Clinical research shows that Vitex may start correcting imbalances after about 10 days, but for the full benefit, it should be taken for 3 cycles or longer. Studies have documented that Vitex has a galactose action, but chemical analysis of the breast milk revealed no changes in its composition. This may be surprising, as the proposed mechanism of action of Vitex involves a reduction of prolactin release. However, it is simply a good example of how the activity of the plant is more However, it is simply a good example of how the actual activity of a plant is more complex than what is demonstrated in specific laboratory tests. Safety considerations as per Materia Medica. Commission E lists that no drug interactions for Vitex. However, there is a theoretical possibility that the herb may, theoretical, keyword, possibility that the herb may interact with dopamine antagonists and dopamine receptor blocking agents. This is from Materia Medica, Chase Tree, in the Principles and Practice of Phytotherapy. Okay, so this book is bringing us data, insight, science from olden days till now, and to bringing us an understanding of what this particular herb does. Okay? Now, my statements on this is that I use it in my herbal formula for the female brain support. If you are a female and you're experiencing issues with all that was just mentioned, PCOS, PMS, menopause, irregularity, endometriosis, fibroids, cysts, so on and so forth, even dopamine concerns in your brain, Vitex is what to use. Or Angus Cactus, also known as chasteberry. What I wanted to speak upon that I find to be extremely interesting is that the term amphoteric comes from chemistry, in which it is used to indicate the ability for the constituents or the chemicals to react in an acid or alkali way. Now, this is getting into alchemy, which could go into theory, into quantum realm, into things that we have yet to understand. God, in other words, or the universe, into bringing you herb to help in regards to the perimeters of what we just spoke upon. Another part that I found interesting is that Vitex is also effective for irregular menstruation, especially when related to endometriosis. I find that interesting because I'm actually kind of stumped, because it's incredible. Because if we go to the other section of the index of this book, to where it mentions for the certain hormone that is mentioned, being this a galactagogue, we got to look at prolactin. And when we look at prolactin in the other parts of this book, and I need to find it actually, allow me a moment please, because I just had it before I went on live. Prolactin. It was on page 141. Let me just mark this page with something for not to lose the page, okay? Thank you everyone for being patient and sticking on through with this here with me. I greatly appreciate it. You're doing a favor to yourself. When we go to the other page that mentions for the classification of hormones, it tells us to take a closer look at estrogen. It's very interesting, this book. Let me see if I can actually show you the page. A closer look at estrogens. Estrogen. There is no chemical called estrogen. Estrogen is a term that describes an effect, not particular a chemical. We really should talk about estrogens, the spectrum of molecular structures that share this effect. These are various natural or synthetic substances that possess the biological activity of estrus producing hormones. Estrus is the period in a female mammal during which ovulation occurs and she is receptive to mating. Mind you, that estrus is not a period. It's just showing a period as a certain time in a female mammal during which ovulation occurs and she is receptive to mating. This is an important point because the periodicity and the receptive time frame vary from one mammalian species to another. Most of the research on plant estrogen has utilized rodents, and rats and mice have very different estrus cycles than humans, starting with the fact that they do not menstruate. This raises many questions about how to extrapolate data from rat studies to therapeutic applications in humans. Estrogens are synthesized from androgens, primarily in the ovaries, and to a lesser extent in the adrenal cortex. These hormones can also be produced in the testes of males. The major estrogen, estradiol, is synthesized from testosterone. Let me turn the camera around. Why do I find this interesting, you may ask? I'll tell you why. Okay, Google. Stop.
To get started, download the Google Home.
The reasons why I find this interesting is because in the first pages that we were reading, it showed that endometriosis was secondary to a menstrual irregularity. Here, it's noting that estrus, because estrogen is not a chemical. Estrogen just describes an effect. So this is an effect from just the process of things. It doesn't describe a chemical. It's a spectrum of a molecular structures that share this effect. So this is going into quantum realm. This is going into something that we try to make a name for. we try to make a name for, but it doesn't have any tangibility to it. That stated, it tells us that this is an important point because the periodicity and this receptive time frame vary from one mammalian species to another. Most of this research on plant estrogen has utilized rodents and rats and mice, which have very different cycles from the human being. They don't menstruate. And that to me is very interesting. Because in the animal kingdom, the majority of mammals that experience a menstrual cycle are the human beings. There's other species that bleed, that are animals, but these species, if you do your searching, are captive, domesticated, or going endangered. Why is this interesting to me? Well, because all of this disease that a lot of us women are undergoing, starting with the bleeding itself, shows a sign of becoming degenerative. Furthermore, into talking about this topic, and please feel free to comment down below as we're discussing this. Let's be open-minded. We're just understanding. We don't have to commit to anything. Remember this part where we read, this raises many questions about how to extrapolate data from rat studies to therapeutic applications in humans. Estrogens are synthesized from androgens, primarily in the ovaries, and to a lesser extent in the adrenal cortex. It's like the adrenals are acting as a backup to the ovaries. And the adrenal glands sit right on top of the kidneys, where the kidneys are the most important in the body. Because if you look at my other videos, if you've been following me for a minute, you would know that the kidneys are vital to our well-being and to our continuity. Of our own humankind, for our species, and etc. These hormones can also be produced in the testes of the males. The major estrogen is synthesized from testosterone. The major estrogen, or what we call estrogen, because this book mentions that estrogen is not a chemical. It's just an effect of something. It's the quantum molecule process, whatever, that comes from testosterone. Follow with me now. I find this to be extremely interesting. Why? Because first off, it mentions that primarily estrogens are synthesized in the ovaries, or what we believe is estrogen, or the process of estrogen. It's primarily coming from the ovaries. But to the extent where the adrenals need to come in, the adrenals bring forward this estrogen. These hormones can also be produced in the testes of the male. The major estrogen is synthesized from testosterone. I'm going to tell you why this is so serious. If you're experiencing PCOS, PMS, menopause, irregularities, bleeding, heavy or light, and it's serious because it shows that the women are needing backup from the male side. You heard that? Bing! Therefore, what I'm trying to bring out here, all in all, is that we're the only mammal species that experiences a menstrual cycle. Aside from animals that are going extinct, or that have been captive or held domesticated, aka enslaved. If we're not enslaved, if we consume the foods that are meant for us, we won't have this problem to where we need to utilize this beautiful, stunning herb that even quantum physics had to make a name for its use of. Going back to that name, amphoteric. It comes from the Greek. And as you know, the Greek, we're starting to understand alchemy. Before they were able to control and do everything else for their gain, and allowing for some knowledge at least to be fell through the cracks. Vitex, chasteberry, Angus cactus heals and cures irregularities when it comes to estrogen. Isn't that something? And they don't know why. To this point, they don't know why. I guess it depends on how much you're masculinized. I guess it depends on how much pressure your man has you on. Or, ooh, I get ticks every time. Bing, bing, hitting, bing, all the ones. Somebody's just syncing with me for whatever reason and hitting pings when I hit those points. God is so good. The universe has so many ways into giving signs and even producing something such, basically a miracle. Esoteric. If you're being held captive, enslaved, if you're masculinized, it is unfortunate. Because this is a sign of showing for degeneration. I know. But guess what, baby? There's no need to cry. There's no need to suffer. There's no need to go through bleeding, PMS, menopause. Because once you cure yourself, it won't exist. Any comments? Any questions? I'm open to sharing ideas or thoughts. You know, this did not speak upon a period in a way of showing that it is natural. Maybe the Greeks knew something we didn't, that now we're enslaved and held captive as women. That's causing the masculinity of this world to metamorph and change and evolve into having us degenerate. This is deep. This is deep. What are your thoughts? Tell me what you feel. I'm open for anything, any thoughts. I really like to understand the woman body because God bless, I'm a woman. It's very important. Because we are the ones to continue progeny. And as we just read from Materia Medica, medical herbalism, the science and practice of herbal medicine, it's incredible. So incredible. If you're having any concerns, chasteberry, Vitex, Angus Cactus is a wonderful herb to utilize. And not only, as mentioned, helps to either act as of an acid or an alkali, it just has amphoteric properties. It just is amphoteric. It's both. It's both. It can either act as an acid or an alkali. So it will also be good for men. To stabilize what is called estrogen in the brain, in the testes. It's incredible. Incredible. Any thoughts? Anybody wants to say anything? Any questions? Anything that we could talk about? It'll be very interesting to get into a conversation about this. The book is called Medical Herbalism. If you study herbalism, this is by far a beautiful book because it mentions 4 studies upon the herbs that we use. And today's herb was Vitex Angus Cactus. It's called Medical Herbalism by David Hoffman. Take a screenshot, boo. Medical Herbalism, the Science and Practice of Herbal Medicine by David Hoffman. He's a holistic naturopath. And this part of Vitex Angus Cactus came from the studies of the principles of practice of phytotherapy. And this portion used very strong words because it said cure. Not a lot of herbalists use that word. So they must have known something that we still, are still brainwashed or controlled into knowing. This herb basically goes through to exactly where it needs to go. And they don't know why. Clinical research shows that Vitex may start correcting imbalances after about 10 days. For the full benefits of it, taking it for 3 cycles or longer would basically show for the full exact benefit. And it doesn't just work with estrogen, it also works with the brain and other components that we have yet to understand. And it also mentions that there's no safety consideration. The only safety consideration shows that it will interact with dopamine antagonists. Dopamine antagonists. So it just makes you happy, as you should as a woman. Because dopamine, as you all know, is a happy receptor hormone. Synapse, energy. That's all the safety considerations. So it makes you happy. It's just an herb that makes you happy and brings forward for you to get better. As what this, book is showing forward for the studies that we've made on it. It does not mention for serotonin. Serotonin is mainly coming from your transverse colon in your gut. And this goes back to the same things that we were discussing in my previous lives and on my whole page. Get on a fruit lifestyle. Anything else outside of a fruit lifestyle, predominantly fruit, plant-based lifestyle, is degeneralizing you. Facts. Facts. Isn't it weird that we are the only main mammal that has a menstrual period? Even when we observe animals giving birth, they usually do not experience behaviors of pain. And I'm not talking about your dog that has been domesticated or your cat that has been domesticated. I'm talking about natural animals in the natural world. They do not show signs of bearing pain when they even give birth. It is only the animals that show behaviors of pain that are domesticated, enslaved, and put upon a pressure that it's not supposed to bear naturally, which causes the menstruation to begin. This is why we got young girls menstruating at 8, 9 years old. Because what's happening is it's going backer and backer and backer and showing signs of degeneration. This is messing with our progeny, because if we have our children even going back and getting this degenerational signs earlier, there will be a point where the baby won't just experience this, but the uterus, thus causing further degeneration or reversing, because we could only talk about this. I don't know all the answers, but we're here to discuss about this and think. Could it be that the degeneration could come to the extent of making women turn into men? Those are some hot topics, boo. Get my free ebook, Quiet Crew, Herbal. Click on the link, Fruits and Herbs to Cleanse and Feel Great. And check out my herbal store. These herbs are proprietary blended for you. Check out the uterine cyst dissolver tea, as I have the most effective, well-known herbs to dissolve and take care of your uterus, and hopefully for the progeny to come. Love and light. I love you all. Bye for now.